My partner and I have been together for 5 years, though we had recently gotten married. We actually met on a blind date that one of our mutual friends set us up on. I was new in town and I didn't know anyone, so I jumped at the opportunity to meet someone. At the very least, I figured if there wasn't a romantic connection, I would possibly make a new friend. Though I was lucky when there was a strong romantic connection between my wife and I. She joked with me on the date that our mutual friend had always been trying to play matchmaker with her, but it never worked before. She spent the night, and from there, it was like she never left. We were completely inseparable from each other. I really thought that I found my best friend when I met her. That's what makes all of this so much harder on me. I was estranged from my family at a young age, and I had to work through a lot of complicated feelings toward them. My father was abusive toward me and my siblings, and I decided I didn't want anything to do with it. I was the only one to leave the family, and there was a lot of resentment toward me because of it. Even though I hated my father for what he did, there was still a part of me that loved him. It was very complex and hard to discuss with people. I shared everything with my wife, and she supported me through a lot of things early on in our relationship. About 6 months ago, I found out that my father had died. He was in a bad car accident, and it took the entire family by surprise. I was saddened by the news, but I also felt extremely guilty for having cut him off. My wife and I went back to my hometown to attend the funeral. While we were there, I was ignoring her a bit, not on purpose, but because I was very sidetracked with my familial problems. My siblings and my mother were very cold toward me after I abandoned them. We had a lot of things to work through, and I intended on trying while I was there. That left my wife alone in town for quite a while, since we were there for about a week and a half. I never would have suspected she was cheating on me at the time, but looking back, there were a few things that I think might have been because of an affair. One night while we were in town, she didn't come to bed. I looked around the house for her, but I didn't see her anywhere. I called her to ask her where she was, and she told me that she needed to get out of the house and she was on a walk. I did wait up for an hour, but I was exhausted and I fell asleep before she got home. I might have been a little too involved in the other things going on in my life to question her about it at the time, but now I think that's where this all began. After we went back home, things still weren't the same for me. I was mourning the loss of my father, and I was really grieving the fact that I hadn't spoken to him in years. There were a lot of things I never said to him that I wanted to, and I felt like that chance was taken from me. However, since he was no longer around, I thought it might be good to try and rekindle a relationship with my family. My wife thought that was a good idea, and she encouraged me to spend more time with them. Throughout all of that time, she was far away from me. It seemed like helping me work through some of these issues was the last thing she wanted to do. It was surprising because she had been so supportive of everything that I told her when we started seeing each other. It felt like I was living with a different person at times. She spent more time away from the house too. She would go out with her friends, and it felt like she was avoiding me. One night, I asked her about what was going on, and she just told me that she felt uncomfortable dealing with death, so she had distanced herself inadvertently because of that. I felt slighted by that because she was supposed to be there for me, but I didn't want to push her away anymore. I started dealing with my things privately after that. Even after I stopped going to her with the issues, she was still distant and absent from my life. Clearly what she had told me was a lie, because her behavior didn't change when mine did. I started to get suspicious that something was going on. It was the last thing that I needed to be dealing with at the time, so I thought I could ignore it. At least I thought I could do that. I was sitting on the couch next to her one night watching a television show, and I saw a number come up on her phone. I didn't recognize the number itself, but I recognized the area code. It was from my hometown. The only people she knew from there was my family, so I assumed one of them had called her. She rejected the call, and I asked her who it was. She told me that it was a friend from work. I asked her about where they were from, and she told me that they lived in the city. It wasn't impossible for them to have a phone number with the area code from my town, but I just didn't believe her. She left a few minutes later, taking her phone with her to no doubt reach out to whoever that was. She had been gone for about 10 minutes when I got up to go and look for her. We were in the middle of watching a television show together, so I was just sitting there with it paused waiting. When I found her, she was in our bedroom with her shirt off. I asked her about what she was doing, and she got kind of red in the face as if I had never seen her naked before. She told me that she splashed some water on her shirt when she was washing her hands and was just changing. I didn't believe what she said. My gut was telling me that there was something else going on. So, later that night, I grabbed her phone while she was asleep and looked through it. Unsurprisingly, when I looked through her pictures, I saw several that she'd clearly just taken earlier that night when she was topless. I searched through her contacts for the number that had called her earlier, and I saw the messages between them. The number wasn't saved, so I didn't know who it was right away. They had been exchanging pictures and sexting with each other for weeks. It all started when we were in town for my father's funeral. I felt sick to my stomach seeing that, but it got worse when I finally realized who it was. Most of the pictures were faceless, but in one of them, I saw a tattoo that I recognized. She had been texting with my uncle. While I was home for my father's funeral, dealing with some of the heaviest things I had ever had to do, my wife was cheating on me with my uncle. He was my dad's brother, so it was even more disgusting that he was focused on sleeping with my wife during his funeral. I thought both of them were absolutely disgusting for their behaviors. I sent myself as many images and screenshots as I could. I would need them for our divorce hearings. I needed to think of something to do to get back at both of them for their actions. They deserve to be humiliated and have their lives turned upside down for what they did. My uncle was married and he had 5 children. He threw all of that away to sleep with my wife. Now that I was talking to my family again, I knew that there was a birthday party coming up for my grandma. Everyone was going to be there. So I told my wife that I wanted to go, and she happily agreed to come along. I checked her phone a couple of nights after I told her, and she had set up a date to sleep with my uncle again. I was happy to see that. Originally, I had just planned on telling everybody about what happened, but if we could walk in on them in the act, that would be even better. The day of the party came along, and everything went well during the event. At the end of the night, we planned on renting one of my grandma's favorite movies and watching it together on a projector in the backyard. I know that my wife and uncle planned to sneak away at that time. When they were gone, I tapped on my aunt's shoulder and asked her if I could talk to her. We walked away from the movie and made our way inside to have a quiet conversation. I pretended like it was about gathering photos of my father to put together in a book for my uncle because I knew how close they were. She thought it was sweet. We walked into the basement together to look for the boxes of photographs that my grandma kept. As soon as we opened the door, we saw my wife topless straddling my uncle. I played it off like I had no idea what was happening, and I had just stumbled in there just like my aunt had. There was a huge screaming match that ensued between my aunt and uncle. Then my wife tried to tell me that she had made a mistake and begged me to forgive her. I told her that we were done. Everybody else at the party heard what was happening, and they came down to see if everything was all right. They had to explain to everyone that they had been sleeping together before we caught them. Everyone was disgusted by their actions, especially my uncle's children. They were both kicked out of the house that night. Hopefully, they at least thought about how foolish they were. My aunt ended up divorcing my uncle and is now selling the house she was awarded in the divorce. She doesn't have to split any of the profit from that with my uncle. I ended things with my wife, and she got nothing from me. I had been burned by my family in the past, so I was smart enough to get a prenup. Every now and then, she'll text me when she's drunk and try to get back together with me. There isn't a chance in hell that I would ever do that. OP, first of all, I'm very sorry to hear about the loss of your father. It sounds like you were experiencing some very complex emotions dealing with the loss. Your wife should have been there for you through all of that instead of worrying about herself. It's truly appalling that your wife and uncle would be so selfish to sleep with each other with everything your family was going through. On top of that, from what it sounds like they met at your father's funeral. Everything about that is just disgusting. They should both be very ashamed of themselves. I'm glad you were able to catch them in the act and have everything work out for you that way. It's good that your aunt found out about it too. Honestly, if they'd both met at a funeral and decided to sleep together, I can't help but wonder if it was either of their first affair. Regardless, I really hope you and your aunt are able to move past this. I hope you guys can focus on your families and open your hearts to other people again in the future. Now, let's move on to our next story. I, 27 male, met my girlfriend, 28 female, through a dating app about 5 years ago. I had just gotten out of a long relationship with my high school girlfriend, who I had been with for about 8 years. I wasn't looking for anything serious at the time. I wanted to enjoy my youth and stay single for a while. I had a few flings before I met my girlfriend. When I met her, I thought that's all it was going to be too. But I quickly found myself wanting more with her. There was something that I just thought was really cool about her, and I wanted to spend time with her. After seeing her off and on for hookups for about a month, I asked her on an official date. She agreed to go with me, and from there our relationship flourished. We had both been in similar situations leading up to our date, and not long after we both agreed that we would only be seeing each other. I had one other woman on my roster that I was sleeping with at the time. So I contacted her and explained everything, which she understood. I assumed that my girlfriend did the same thing. My girlfriend had to travel between Philadelphia and Baltimore regularly for her work. There were times when she would have to spend a week in Baltimore and I wouldn't see her at all. It was completely ordinary for her to have to pick up and go there on a moment's notice as well. I knew that she had 2 apartments because of that. She spent so much time between both cities that she lived between them essentially. On average, probably she maybe spent about 60% of a month in Philadelphia with me. I got used to it over time. We would text often when she was away, and we would video chat when she was available. Never in my wildest dreams would I have imagined that she had a completely different life in Baltimore. From the way she made it sound when she told me about it, she went there just to work. She didn't make it seem like she had any friends there or anything really tying her to the city. Last year, she told me that she was going to be in the city around Valentine's Day. We had always made a point to spend holidays together, so I was disappointed. Though, we ended up celebrating Valentine's Day early the week before she left. I thought that it would be nice to surprise her anyway. I figured it would be a cute gesture just to show her that I loved her and wanted to take part in her life. I ended up finding her address in Baltimore through her Amazon address profile, and I made my way over. I had a giant teddy bear, chocolates, and some champagne to share with her when I arrived. I pulled into the parking lot of her apartment, and I walked up to the entrance. I was lucky enough to spot her on her balcony before I even went in. I didn't want to be spotted by her because I wanted everything to be a surprise, so I ducked next to a large pickup truck. Just a moment later, I saw a man walk out onto the balcony with her. I was shocked to see that. He hugged her from the back and kissed her neck. It was clear that she was cheating on me, but I didn't know anything about this person or how long it had been going on. I got back in my car and I sat there for a while, feeling sick to my stomach while I tried to figure out what to do. I loved my girlfriend, and I saw a future with her that I realized was a complete lie after that. After a while, I noticed both of them leaving the apartment. I composed myself enough to follow them. I didn't know who that guy was, but I needed to find out. They went to a fancy restaurant where they had dinner and some drinks before going back to the apartment. While they were back at her apartment, I decided that I needed to look for the guy online. I searched through her friends list and followers list on her social media, but I didn't see him. However, I found another social media page that belonged to my girlfriend. It was mostly private, but I could still see some things. Through the second page, I found the guy that I saw her with. His profile was very public, and it was clear that they were in a relationship. It also looks like they worked at the same company together. After digging through all of it, I realized that their relationship had been going on for years. It started shortly after our relationship did. On top of that, it seems like she had an entire other life in Baltimore that I didn't know about. I felt like I had never even known the woman I had been with for 5 years. She had kept half of her life secret from me entirely. Betrayed isn't a strong enough word to explain how I felt when I discovered everything. She had lied to me and led me to believe that our relationship was something more than it was to her. I thought that the guy she was with didn't know about me either. If he had been a secret to me, I didn't see why she wouldn't keep me a secret from him. I needed to expose her. Everybody that she knew in Baltimore needed to know about the entire other life she was living. In the morning, I grabbed the bear and the chocolates that I had bought for her, and I made my way to the office. I was going to play dumb until she had to admit to me that she was dating another man. I walked right up to the receptionist's desk and told her that I was there to see my girlfriend. She was clearly very confused when I told her who it was. The receptionist called for her, but while she was on the phone, I saw her standing next to a cubicle and laughing about something. I told the receptionist that I saw her, and I walked right past the desk. My girlfriend saw me, and the smile fell from her face. I wished her a happy Valentine's Day, and I tried to hand her the bear. Before she could grab it, the man that I saw on the balcony with her stood up from his cubicle and introduced himself. I made sure to introduce myself as her boyfriend. He looked at her and then back at me before he shook his head and told me that I needed to leave her alone. He spoke for her and said that she didn't want anything to do with me, and that if I didn't leave her alone, they would file a restraining order. I was even more confused than I was the night before. I told him that I didn't know what he was talking about, that I just came to surprise my girlfriend for Valentine's Day, and he must have had me mistaken for someone else. Then he told me that he was her boyfriend, and that I was basically stalking her. My girlfriend stopped him before he threatened me again, and then walked out of the office with me. I asked her what was going on, and she told me that she had been seeing the guy there. It was clear from the way he acted that she had told him about me, though she told him that I was some crazy ex who was stalking her. After a few minutes of being outside with her, her other boyfriend walked out and joined her. Before he could say anything else to me, I told him the truth. I explained that she was actively with me in Philadelphia and that I didn't know anything about him. He didn't believe me right away, but then my girlfriend told him the truth too. He stormed off into the office, and my girlfriend followed after him. When he was inside, he made a huge scene about what he discovered. They were yelling at each other in the office while she tried to calm him down and get him to be quiet. She was clearly humiliated by what happened. Personally, I felt very satisfied with the results. Their boss had to come down into the area and tell them to go home for the day. I was standing by the reception desk and watching them, then the other guy she had been with told her he wanted her out of the apartment. I couldn't help but laugh. Maybe I was naive for thinking she had been paying for this other apartment herself, but I was wrong. I chimed in and told her that I wanted her out of the apartment in Philadelphia too. She had nowhere else to go, at least not that we were aware of. I drove back home and told myself I was going to forget all about her. A few days later, when she returned to Philadelphia, she saw that a lot of her things were already packed up and ready for her to take away. She tried pleading with me because she had nowhere else to go, but I wasn't listening to it. On top of that, her boss had let her go for inappropriate behavior in the office. I didn't know if the other guy was also fired because of the fight. I kind of hoped that he wasn't. It seems like he had been missiled by her just as I was, and I didn't want him to suffer because of her. My girlfriend moved her things out of my apartment and in her sister's. After everything, she was left without a job or a home. I just hoped that she got whatever she wanted out of the situation and learned from the consequences. OP, I can't believe you went through something like this. For someone to successfully live a double life as long as your girlfriend did, she had to have been an excellent liar. Knowing that their relationship began around the same time as yours is also very suspicious. I have a lot of questions about how everything started in Baltimore, but in the end, I don't think they'd really matter. I doubt she ever thought either of you would figure out what was going on. Maybe that was why she told the other man that you were some kind of stalker. He might have seen your text messages or phone calls, and she needed to come up with an explanation. It's good that you were able to confront her about it and leave her. I also really hope that the other man still has his job and is able to carry on. I wish both of you well moving past this. Not everyone is as duplicitous as this. I hope you guys are able to find an honest partner in the future. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.